Patricia Nez Henderson calling in this morning. Got 8 minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is Herschel Clark calling in on behalf of Heirs Life Coalition. Got 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Dodson, Ms. Francis, Ms. Nez Henderson, and Mr. Clark for announcing yourself this morning. So with that, we're going to go ahead and proceed forward to the next item on the agenda, which is review and adopt the agenda. Lorraine, can you read that into the record, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Approve agenda of the Law and Order Committee, 24th Nomination Council regular meeting through telecommunication presiding. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton, Chairwoman. Honorable Otto So, Vice Chairperson. 1, call meeting to order. Will call and invocation. Number 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. Number 3, review and adopt agenda. Number 4, review and adopt the journals for August 10th, 23rd, and the 30th, 2021. 5, receiving reports. A, report from Walton Yazzie, Chapter Manager, Chinle Chapter, regarding continuous break-ins and vandalism of the Chinle Solid Waste Station. B, report from Kevin Barnett, Summer Intern, Office of Legislative Counsel, on the Grit versus Oklahoma decision. Old business. A, report from Laird Chief, Fire Chief, Nomination Fire and Rescue Services on the Fire Department's agreement across the Navajo Nation. This was on table at the last meeting. 7, new business. A, legislation number 0174-21. B, legislation number 0158-21. 8, close of meeting, announcement and adjournment. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. So with that, the agenda has been read into the record. Could I get a motion and a second?
Delegate James, motion.
Motion to Casey.
Thank you for the motion and the second. We have motion made by Delegate Vince James, second by Honorable Eugene So. So with that, committee members, are there any amendments that need to be made to the agenda or any questions or comments to the agenda? Not hearing anything, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Leonard, Mr. Mose, can you assist us with the vote, with the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So.
Oh, Casey.
Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Chair, a vote of 2 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you for assisting us with the agenda and with the roll call this morning, Mr. Mose. So with that, we'll proceed forward. The agenda passes as is with a vote of 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 not voting, 2 are absent, 1 is the chair. Item number 4, review and adopt the journals. We do have 3 journals: August 10th, 2021, August 23rd, 2021, and August 30th, 2021. Committee members, we can vote on all 3 at one time, or we can vote on them separate. How would the committee like to proceed forward with adopting the journals?
So now that you have this is Delegate James again. I'll go ahead and motion to adopt the journal, all 3 of them. I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Can I get a second?
Oh, Casey.
Okay, with that, we do have a motion made by Honorable Vince James and a second by Honorable Eugene So to adopt the journals for August 10th, August 23rd, and August 30th, 2021. Are there any questions or any comments regarding the journals at this time? Not hearing anything, we can go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Mr. Mose, can you assist us with that, please?
Yes, Chair. Honorable Bench James,
Yeah, it's just not us. Delegate Payne votes green.
Honorable Bench James votes green. Honorable Eugene So,
Oh, that is, thank you.
Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So, Honorable Otto So, Honorable Edmund Yazzie, Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Chair voted 2 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mose. 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 not voting. The journals are hereby accepted. We'll move down to item number 5, receiving reports. We do have a report from Walton Yazzie, the chapter manager for Chinle chapter, regarding the continuous break-ins and vandalism of the Chinle solid waste station. Mr. Yazzie, are you on the line?
Madam Chair, I'm on the line. This is Otto So. Thank you.
Good morning, Vice Chair. Thank you for letting us know. Mr. Walton Yazzie, are you on the line? Do we have any elected officials on the line from Chinle chapter? Last and
Madam
final
Chair,
call for Mr. Walton Yazzie. Yes, Honorable Eugene So.
oh, yeah, not only after on how it is class. The way that Chinle is should that be changed. 191 Dokoto area number 7. Those that 18 about a mile and a half back there, Christ transfer station. Okay, get Yachina, Kariva, ya been Harit shot or Nita Note, Salada, Chapatan, Shito, second dust in the church, no. Could order all the because on the household is Asian Yan. So we did try to inform the new captain there, a young lady from Clienta, Lady Kim. Her name is Kim. The other question which I see the in
Point of
other
order,
regards,
Delegate Payne.
Point of order raised by Delegate Vince James. Shanella Vince James, you have the floor.
So now that I believe we need to call for a motion in a second, and then if he's going to do the report, then we should add him on to the agenda. My point of order, Shanella. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Shanella. Yeah, I think that Honorable Eugene, so on the agenda, we do have Walton Yazzie listed for providing the report. I did call upon Mr. Walton Yazzie 4 times and he didn't answer. And I understand that you want to provide us some information on the on what is happening. But if you could just email me, Shaja, and let me know, let the Law and Order Committee know how we can assist. We'll be happy to help you with providing some police report. But on the report, on the agenda, we do have Walton Yazzie, and he has not responded yet. So I'm going to move down to item number 5, or item 5B on the agenda.
Point of order,
Yes, point of order, Eugene So.
my point of order is he said, as you name everybody, he said any elected official from Chinle, so I refer that was, it might be me, I'm an elected official from the Chinle chapter. Eben Nai Hasi. Thank you, but it's all right with me. Go ahead.
Point of order.
Point of order, Honorable Otto So.
Yes, the agenda particularly indicates who. And it's supposed to be the Chinle chapter. And that's who we should who should be presenting this report. It doesn't say the Navajo Nation Council or anything. So I'd like to move forth with presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair Otto So. Shaja, just go ahead and email the Law and Order Committee the issues that are happening, and then we can try to work with you to get it addressed. We'll move down to item 5B, report from Kevin Barnett, summer intern, Office of Legislative Counsel on McGirt versus Oklahoma decision. Mr. Kevin Barnett, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Thank you for being on the line, Mr. Barnett. I understand that this is your first time presenting to the Law and Order Committee, so let me give you a few rules on the procedure. First, I would like to remind everybody who is listening in to please mute your phone. The Law and Order Committee has a zero tolerance rule. If your phone is not muted, we will automatically kick you off the line. So make sure that your phone is on mute. Number two, Mr. Barnett, is you will have 15 minutes to present your information. If you need an additional 5 minutes, you can request those 5 minutes. If there are no objections, the 5 minutes will automatically be granted to you. Upon completion of your presentation, if you could inform the committee that you are completed, then what will happen is the floor will be turned over to the delegates who have any questions concerning the presentation that you're going to be giving to us here today. You cannot speak until you are recognized by the chair. And if there are any documents that you have, we'd appreciate those documents ahead of time so that we can follow along with you. Do you have any questions at this time regarding the procedure for presenting before the Law and Order Committee, Mr. Barnett?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, so with that, committee members, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion at this time to hear the report from Kevin Barnett. And I need a second.
Delegate James motion.
I need a second. Second call for a second.
Okay, so go.
Oh, thank you for that,
Right,
Shah. So with that, Mr. Barnett, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. You have 15 minutes to present your information. With that, Mr. Barnett, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have a PowerPoint that I believe was meant to be sent to the relevant person who would be able to display it. I believe Ms. Bobroff was going to send that to that individual. But I can also share my screen as an alternative.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, or if you want to actually email it out to the committee members, that's probably the best thing to do. If you could send it to Lorraine Spencer, she can go ahead and distribute it out to the committee.
It looks like Ms. Bobroff, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Kevin. This is Ms. Bobroff. I did send a copy of your PowerPoint to all of the committee members and Ms. Spencer about 5 minutes ago. Thank you.
And can everyone who has video, can everyone see the PowerPoint presently?
I'm sorry, hold on. Before your time begins, committee members, do you have a copy of that presentation?
Delegate James, I see it on my screen.
Thank you for that, Delegate James. So with that, Mr. Barnett, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and honorable delegates of the Law and Order Committee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. Shortly into my internship with the Office of Legislative Counsel, I became aware that some delegates would appreciate a thorough explanation of what the implications of the McGirt versus Oklahoma decision were. And McGirt was a Supreme Court case that was decided in July of 2020 regarding the status of tribal reservation lands in the state of Oklahoma. So with that, I'm going to go into some of the legal background that affects the case and then the substance of the case, and then the after effects of the case, both specifically in Oklahoma and the potential effects, if any, that this decision has on the Navajo Nation specifically. So who is McGirt in the McGirt case? Mr. Jim C. McGirt is a Seminole Nation tribal member. In the 1990s, he was accused and later convicted under Oklahoma state criminal law for sexually abusing his girlfriend's granddaughter on several occasions. For that crime, he was sentenced, and I don't know the exact time of his sentence, but it was a number of decades at the very least. And so now that we know who McGirt is, we need to know why he's challenging his conviction in the Supreme Court to begin with. In 1833, after the Trail of Tears and the forced relocation of the Muskogee Creek Nation, as well as various other nations that now reside in Oklahoma, the United States and the Muskogee made a treaty that resulted in the Muskogee ceding their ancestral lands in Georgia and Alabama, and in turn getting a guarantee to a newly created reservation in what is now Oklahoma. So basically, this treaty eliminated any claim of the Muskogee to their original lands and then set aside some lands for them in what was then called the Indian Territory. And so why is this relevant to McGirt's conviction? It is relevant because Mr. McGirt is a Seminole Nation tribal member, and he committed his crimes within the boundaries of the Muskogee Reservation that was created by that treaty. I have the wrong year on that. I'm sorry for that. It was an 1833 treaty. The fact that he committed his crimes within those boundaries has legal implications as to who can prosecute him. And so ultimately, the question that is relevant to this case is, was that land still within Indian country at the time that Mr. McGirt committed his sexual crimes against a minor? And so there's a large swath of federal Indian law precedents that I'm going to briefly cover to help explain this point. So in Ex parte Crow Dog, which was an 1883 Supreme Court decision, Crow Dog, who was a Lakota medicine man, killed the chief of his tribe over an internal dispute, and that murder occurred on tribal lands that were under the province of the Lakota Nation. Crow Dog made restitution to the chief's family in accordance with tribal custom, but the federal government became aware of that murder and arrested Crow Dog, convicted him in federal court, and sentenced him to death. Crow Dog appealed that to the Supreme Court, which held that federal criminal law at the time did not allow for the federal government to prosecute a crime committed by one Indian against another Indian. And I use that as a term of art to refer to a member of a federally recognized tribe. So all that the Supreme Court here said was that federal criminal law at the time does not allow for the federal government to convict Crow Dog. So what does the federal government do next? It passes the Major Crimes Act in 1885 by passing a law that gave them the ability to prosecute certain major crimes in Indian country. And those crimes include murder, manslaughter, kidnapping, robbery, burglary, as well as certain felony sex crimes and felony child abuse and neglect crimes, which are the most relevant to Mr. McGirt's case. And the constitutionality of this act was upheld, I believe, the next year in a case known as United States versus Kagama. So whereas in Ex parte Crow Dog, the federal government had no ability to prosecute crimes committed by one Indian against another Indian, they now have that right, and that right is recognized by the Supreme Court. So many delegates might be familiar with the concept of allotment, which originated in the Dawes Act in the 1880s. This was a goal of the federal government to eliminate tribal cultures and tribal ownership of reservation lands. The very incorrect and racist thinking behind this policy was that if non-Indians were transplanted onto formerly Indian lands, then their native counterparts would somehow become better accustomed to white American culture and abandon their cultural practices. And it was a very awful plan that had a very negative effect on tribal land ownership throughout almost all reservations. So very generally, allotment would involve a specific reservation, for example, the Navajo Nation, being surveyed and divided up into land parcels. And then following this process, so much of the land would be given to the nation as a whole, a certain amount would be given to individual Indian heads of households, and then the remaining so-called surplus lands would be sold to interested non-Indian purchasers. And the reason this is so relevant to McGirt's case is that depending on how the federal government allotted a specific reservation, the lands were either removed from Indian country status, meaning that, you know, one day they're tribal lands and the next day they're non-tribal lands over which the tribe has no authority whatsoever. And the alternative would be that if the federal government disposed of the lands in a certain way, there was no change to the lands at all. And so that's what I'm going to get into in the next slide. But briefly, I'll just say, you know, some people might be asking the question, how is the US government able to do this, considering the fact that pretty much every single treaty guaranteed to the relevant tribe that they would have you know, ownership and dominion over the lands that were being reserved for them in their treaties. How is it that the US government is basically able to say, you know, we're just going to take this land, we don't really care if you give us permission or not. And that leads to another dark chapter in the Supreme Court's history with regard to Indian tribes, and that's the case of Lone Wolf versus Hitchcock. Lone Wolf was a tribal member who was who resided on the Apache, Comanche, and Kiowa reservation, and he was aware that the treaty between those tribes and the United States government had guaranteed to those tribes the right to unaltered use of their lands, and that no non-Indians would be able to come in and take over the lands. And that, you know, you would need to have 3/4 of the voting membership of those tribes to negotiate a land cession. So what the Supreme Court said in Lone Wolf versus Hitchcock is that, and you know, again, this is their very racist and awful reasoning. They said that because tribal people are inferior to their white American counterparts, the federal government, as their guardian, can just decide that it's in their best interest. Similarly to how a legal guardian decides what's in the best interest of their ward, which is usually a child. That's how the Supreme Court envisioned and still envisions to some degree the role of the federal government in relation to tribes. So this case says that the US government, so long as it's clear, can break its promises with tribes, which is a very unfortunate reality. So as I was alluding to earlier, depending on how a reservation was depending on how a reservation was allotted, it was either reduced in size, meaning it was diminished, or its boundaries were left unaltered. There are numerous cases on both sides of this. A classic case is Solem versus Bartlett, where the Supreme Court found that the lands were not diminished because of the way that the lands were sold. And this gets into very technical details that I'm happy to answer questions about after my presentation. So in the memo that I sent, or that was sent to the Law and Order Committee about a month and a half ago, and we're happy to send another copy, I have a graph, I did not include it here, which was possibly a mistake, that explained that if the federal government buys all of the lands that are surplus from an allotment act all at once, and then later sells it off to interested non-Indian purchasers, the reservation is typically diminished because the sale to non-Indians is only between the federal government and the non-Indians. Whereas if the federal government does not purchase the lands directly from the tribe, but instead organizes sales between the tribe and non-Indians, then the reservation is not diminished. So I'm happy to explain that further. And I'll briefly go over the types of evidence that are used to determine whether diminishment occurred. When I talk about evidence, I'm referring to acts of Congress that relate to the status of a reservation. So those are typically allotment acts, but they could be something else, like in McGirt versus Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma argued that the act that brought Oklahoma into the Union as a state could also be used to indicate an intent to diminish the Muskogee Reservation. So the most important type of evidence is the statutory text. What does it say about the status of Indian lands? How does it sell the surplus lands to interested non-Indian purchasers? Does it indicate that it's going to be returned to the public domain, which almost always indicates diminishment? Or does it say that the Secretary of the Interior is merely authorized to sell and dispose of the surplus lands, which does not indicate diminishment typically? You can also look at the legislative history of the act. That could indicate that even if Congress was not being very clear about what it intended to do with the surplus lands, perhaps their debates on the House and Senate floors indicated that. And additionally to that, there's the understanding at the time, what did the Secretary of the Interior interpret the act to do after it was passed? And finally, the least important form of evidence is demographic history of the land at issue. And I understand I'm about to hit the 15-minute mark, so if I could have 5 more minutes, I should be able to wrap it up.
Committee members, are there any objections to giving Mr. Barnett 5 more minutes to complete his presentation? Not hearing anything, Mr. Barnett, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So the least persuasive form of evidence for these cases is the demographic history of the land at issue. And that was what was central in McGirt, and which I will discuss momentarily. So demographic history basically means, and again, this is often referred to in very condescending ways towards tribes. The basic question that the court has asked is, has the land lost its quote unquote Indian character? Meaning, is it basically all non-Indians who live in this area, or is it still an area where there's a large Indian population. And the key thing with demographic history is that you can't say, well, just because there's not many tribal members in this one specific area, that does not mean necessarily that the reservation was diminished. You can't rely on demographic history alone, but you can use it to shed light on the other forms of evidence I have listed here. So the ultimate question in the McGirt case, which I referred to earlier, was the land where McGirt committed his crimes, which I will refer to as the crime location, part of the Muskogee Reservation at the time he committed them. So we absolutely know that the crime location included the original boundaries of the reservation as guaranteed by the 1834 treaty. But the question is, did allotment reduce the size of that reservation and therefore bring that land, the crime location land, into the state of Oklahoma exclusively? And so ultimately, there's two options here. If the crime location was on the reservation, then per the Major Crimes Act, Oklahoma had no ability to prosecute McGirt because he's a Seminole Nation member, and his conviction under Oklahoma criminal law is invalid. Whereas if the crime location was not on the reservation, then McGirt's convictions were valid, because if a tribal member of any tribe commits a crime on non-Indian land that's covered by the Major Crimes Act, they are very much liable to the state courts and the state system. So what did the court hold in McGirt? In a 5-4 decision, the court held that the relevant allotment act at issue related to the Muskogee Creek Nation reservation, it did not diminish the reservation size, which means that the original boundaries guaranteed by the 1834 treaty were unchanged. And so without any act of Congress supporting a claim of diminishment, the 1834 treaty boundaries remain unchanged, and the crime location remains in Indian country. So what happened to Mr. McGirt after the court's decision? So he had his Oklahoma state criminal law convictions overturned because there was no ability to prosecute him in the first place. Unfortunately for him, he was subsequently indicted by a federal grand jury and quickly and readily convicted in November 2020 and sentenced to life in prison. So yes, he got his Oklahoma state criminal conviction overturned, but he was still held accountable under the Major Crimes Act. What happens to similarly situated defendants in Oklahoma? So when I say similarly situated, I mean other tribal member defendants who were convicted under state law for crimes that occurred in Indian country that was now determined to be Indian country from this decision. So that would be a person who was in a similar situation as McGirt. It's unclear how that's going to affect them. The court might say that it's retroactive in effect, meaning that everybody who was previously convicted falsely under Oklahoma criminal law will have those convictions overturned. But they could very well say, that would just be too much of, a kerfuffle. And we're just going to say that moving forward, this is the rule. So what's the immediate effect on the Navajo Nation? There is no immediate effect because the Navajo's territorial boundaries were not at issue. The only boundaries at issue were those related to the tribes in eastern Oklahoma and the treaties and allotment acts that affected them. So once this decision came out, there was no change whatsoever to the Navajo Nation, its land, or its ability to govern itself. What's the long-term effect on the Navajo Nation? The McGirt case may become more relevant in the long term. It would become relevant in a case where perhaps a tribal member in a area towards the border of the reservation committed a crime and tried to argue that the state of, let's say, Utah, Arizona, or New Mexico had no ability to prosecute him or her. because that land was no longer within the Navajo Nation. These cases usually come from criminal defendants trying to avoid state criminal process because perhaps they think that the federal process will be lighter on them. But it can also come from the Navajo Nation potentially trying to issue taxes. Towns that are near the edge of the reservation but are still within the reservation might object and say, no, we're not in the reservation anymore. You can't implement that tax. That was what it was at issue in a case in 2016 called Nebraska versus Parker with the Omaha tribe. But ultimately, the evidentiary standards that were used to determine diminishment in McGirt would be applied to any future litigation regarding the Navajo lands' status as Indian country. And the nice thing about this case is that it raises the bar for showing whether diminishment occurred. Diminishment's not going to be found lightly, and you can't just say, well, there's not many Navajo tribal members living in this one area, therefore they've lost jurisdiction over this land. It has to be something that's based off an act of Congress, and it has to be fairly clear for the Navajo Nation to have any changes to its land boundaries. So I am done. If I went over time, I very much apologize.
Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Barnett. Committee members, are there any questions at this time regarding the presentation that has been provided to us today?
Madam Chair,
Honorable Eugene So, the floor is yours. Honorable Eugene So, the floor is yours. You can go ahead.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sure. So, what's the last two slides I was referring to is what's the immediate effect on the Navajo Nation? And there it says no immediate effect on the Navajo Nation because the Navajo Nation territorial boundaries were not at issue. That kind of a question me regards to that because of during the homestead lease regulation public hearing across the Navajo Nation, and director of the Navajo Land Department, Mike Colonna, was using the executive order as just an executive order, and the president can always change that executive order regards to the issue of the land. Okay, now down there in a second, it says what's the long-term effect on the Navajo Nation? At the last bullet there, it says the evidentiary, meaning that whoever took oath or whatever that was brought up as an evidence is going to be used, and it says at the end, it says would be applied in future litigation regarding Navajo land status as Indian country. What does those two mean? A kind of conflict with me trying to understand. Thank you.
Mr. Barnett, the floor is yours to answer questions posed by Delegate Eugene So.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate. So specifically, the case in McGirt did not involve an executive order reservation, which has a bit of a different framework or a different basis in law for setting aside land as Indian country. It could be possible, but I'm not as confident in saying this. It could be possible that the president could revoke it But I would have to review whether the executive order reservations received any congressional support or any congressional codification to confirm that they were Indian country. But for the most part, executive order reservations are within Indian country because they're set aside for the benefit of tribes. Regarding the last slide, I'm not trying to suggest that there is any present litigation with the regarding Navajo Nation lands. There isn't that I'm aware of, at least. But I'm just saying, in a hypothetical scenario where somebody challenges the status of a small area of the Navajo Nation, the analysis that was used in McGirt, meaning looking at the legislative text, the statutory history, that would be relied on to determine whether Congress intended to remove that area of the Navajo Nation from Indian country. And when I say Indian country, I mean lands that are held in trust as reservation lands for the benefit of a tribe. And so that's a very legal term. And it's not to say that the Navajo Nation's boundaries are in dispute presently. It's more to say that if there were to be a dispute, how would the courts deal with it? And to say that the Navajo Nation's land status as Indian country would be changed would mean that it would be recognized as not being in trust or not being within the jurisdiction of the Navajo Nation. But I guess the point I'm trying to get across is that at least for congressionally created areas of reservations, Congress would have to very clearly indicate that this is no longer part of a reservation. And I'm not aware of any present challenges to any areas of the Navajo Nation and its land as Indian country. So I hope that's helpful. I'm happy to.
No, Kevin, this is Dana. I need to intercede here. Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Dana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Law and Order Committee, for hearing the report from Mr. Barnett. I don't think that when it was introduced, that he emphasized that he was a summer law clerk at the Office of Legislative Counsel. And this is the big project he worked on, or one of the big projects. This is his analysis. My recommendation here is that he provide a written response, because it is fairly complex, the question raised by delegates Eugene. So we don't want to provide any misinformation or create any confusion. So we will provide that response in writing to make sure that we touch all areas, because as a law clerk, Mr. Barnett is not privy to any and all of the litigations that the nation might currently be involved in or looking forward to in the future. So we will be providing a detailed written response to that question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that clarification there, Dana. So with that, Delegate Eugene, so I believe that your questions will be answered probably by Dana herself or maybe one of the other attorneys in writing. Ashpiga.
Oh, Pilar, Riga.
Okay, not here. Committee members, are there any other questions or comments at
Oh,
this?
Riga, thank you. That's it. Ariga.
Oh, yeah, Shaja. Committee members, are there any other questions or comments at this time? Mr. Barnett, I do have just one question for you, and also Dana, who's on the line. As you know, we are currently amending Title 17. And so I just want to know, the McGirt case does not affect the Navajo Nation in terms of anything dealing with our criminal laws. Can you, I guess, clarify that for me and let me know if it does and things that we should be aware of, or if it doesn't, and we're good to go with moving forward with the amendment.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Basically, the criminal element in this case is just, does the state have the ability to prosecute Mr. McGirt for murder, or does the federal government have the ability to prosecute Mr. McGirt for murder? I'm not aware of the specifics of the amendments to 17 Navajo Nation Code, but it could be the case that a tribe could prosecute somebody for a crime presently, such as murder. I imagine that many tribes would prefer to have the federal government do that instead. But ultimately, there is no implication as to whether a tribe can prosecute members of tribes on their lands from this case. The more relevant case for that would be, I believe it was Oliphant versus Suquamish tribe, which held that specifically non-Indians can't be prosecuted by tribes. But generally, McGirt does not have an effect, to my understanding, as to the Navajo Nation's ability to prosecute somebody who commits a crime on Indian country. There is no double jeopardy concern. So if the Navajo Nation wanted to prosecute a Navajo tribal member for a crime and the federal government also wanted to prosecute them for that same crime, there would be no double jeopardy at all. And so both sovereigns could prosecute them. But ultimately, and I hope I'm not repeating myself, McGirt is just state or federal who has the ability to prosecute. Thank you.
Thank you for that, I guess, clarification. Committee members, this is the last time I'll be asking, are there any questions or comments based on the information that's been provided to us here by Mr. Barnett today? Not hearing anything, Mr. Barnett. We're going to go ahead and take a vote at this time to accept your report. Mr. Mose, can you assist us with the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So.
Oh, that is, yeah.
Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So.
I vote green.
Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Chair, I voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Three in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting, one delegate being absent. We're going to go ahead and accept your report at this time, Mr. Barnett. We appreciate the work that you've done this past summer. We appreciate the presentation that you've given to us here today. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Barnett, when is your last day working as an intern?
It is, Ms. Bobroff was kind enough to extend an offer to continue through the school year. I will let her address, if anything has changed in that regard. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the time this summer working on behalf of the Navajo Nation.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett, and we hope that you learned something from the Navajo people and from the form of government that we currently have. We appreciate your assistance during this time. and hopefully we'll be hearing from you throughout the semester. So with that, Mr. Barnett, we're going to go ahead and excuse you at this time. Thank you for your report.
Performance assessment score. Do you have that? What's already talking about 1 point?
With that, committee members, we're going to go ahead and move down to item 6, old business. We do have a report from Larry Chi, the fire chief for the Navajo Nation Fire and Rescue Service with the fire department's agreement across the Navajo Nation. Mr. Chi, are you on the line? Second call for Mr. Larry Chi.
Madam Chair, can you hear me? I'm not sure if I'm on the line.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Chi.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chi, we do have, we did table your report the last time. Lorraine, can you go ahead and read this into the record so that we have an understanding of this particular report as old business?
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the LOC committee. This report was made on August 30th, 2021. And on the agenda, it only had for San Juan County, but an amendment was made at that time to include all the Navajo Nation Fire Department's agreement across the Navajo Nation. So with that, a motion was made by Otto, second by Vince James, with a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 not voting. At that time, all of the entire Navajo Nation was included, but the committee asked for a report to be given to the LOC this morning to include all the Navajo Nation's report. I'm not too sure if Mr. Chi sent out a report regarding all the Navajo Nation fire departments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Lorraine. So with that, committee members, I need a motion to remove this report from the table and rehear this report today from Mr. Larry Chi, Fire Chief for the Navajo Nation Fire and Rescue Services on the fire department's agreement across the Navajo Nation. So with that, I do need a motion and a second.
Delegate James, motion.
I need a second, members.
Vice Chair will second that. Thank you.
Who's going to second it?
Vice Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vice Chair. Okay, so with that, we do have a motion made by Honorable Vince James, second by Vice Chair Otto So to remove this report from the table and rehear this report today. So with that, committee members, I'm going to go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Mr. Mose, can you assist us with the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So.
Honorable
Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So.
I vote green.
Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Chair, I voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed.
3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting, 1 delegate being absent. We're going to go ahead and hear the report at this time. Mr. Chi, are you ready to provide the law and order information that was requested of you?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have sent 2, actually 1, 2, 3 documents to Lorraine there. So, and PDF. So it kind of goes over the report in writing. Then I'll go ahead and go over the report if the committee is ready.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chi. Before I turn the floor over to you for the presentation, I would like to ask you, Mr. Chi, do you need to be reminded of the rules and procedure here at Law and Order Committee?
No, ma'am. I'm aware.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chi. So with that, Mr. Chi, you do have 15 minutes to present your information. If you need an additional 5 minutes, just let us know. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For everyone that's on the line, as noted and said, my name is Larry Chi. I'm the Fire Chief of the Navajo Nation. Navajo Nation Fire operates 8 fire stations currently, and each fire station is in direct contact with the information that's being requested this morning as far as mutual aid. How many do we have, and for which counties and for the whole Navajo Nation is what we're going to report this morning. Madam Chair, committee members, and audience. As I said, we have 8 fire stations across the nation, 3 in New Mexico, and then the rest are on the Arizona side. How mutual agreements work through our department is we have a template that's developed by Department of Justice, who reviews them legally. We take that as a template and send them to the districts through their operations captain, and the districts, since they're in direct contact with the county, and their operations section receives the template either by email or in person. So they take that back to their fire administration, their fire chief, and their legal department, and from there they review legally if the content is what they want to get into agreement with, and from there they can change the language or not. We prefer not having them change the language or any wording, because if that happens and that starts, then we start the negotiations, and that takes longer to agree to by not only the Navajo Nation, but also the other legal departments from the county or the state, or even other fire departments that look at the MOA. So over the years, we've circulated an older version that's back in 2006, I believe, or 7, that stated. And currently, those are still in effect until the agreement or the agreeer on the other party wants to change it or to amend it. Then it comes back to the nation to go over the document again. So that has not happened yet. But so recently in 2020, a new template was developed by Dan Watts, DOJ representative, and a new template was written, and so that was sent out to majority of the prior contacts, MOAs that we have, and it goes back to 2020, 2019, 17, 16, and 13, and those consist of not only county, but also other state fire districts like Pico Valley, Ganado, and also the municipal fire departments like Gallup. So we do have, I don't know if you have the email yet, but we have 14 listed as a follow-up and as initial MOAs in writing. So, but we have yet to circulate more and revisit circulating the new template. that's been developed. So we depend on the fire districts at the district level, the lieutenants, to circulate that for us. So, but most of the time they'll call our office up here, the captain's office and my office. We provide templates, so we're more than welcome to do that. The MOA, pretty much, the content is pretty much self-explanatory, like any MOA among organizations outside the nation that agree to mutual aid. As far as the fire MOA, it just kind of spells out we'll help each other in time of emergencies. That could involve vehicle accidents, medical calls, house fires, wildland fires, and so on. So it just pretty much spells out how we're going to help each other and who is responsible for their equipment, for their manpower, and so on. So that is all in the MOA. Other than that, Madam Chair, that's pretty much the report or presentation on the MOA context that we have. Madam Chair?
Whoever's in charge of the calls, can you delete that number or hang up on the number that's being loud? Thank you. So with that, committee members, the presentation has been provided to us by Mr. Chi, and he did say that he sent out an email this morning. Ms. Spencer actually sent out the email at 11:05 a.m. Are there any questions at this time by the committee members? Second call, are there any questions or comments for the report that Mr. Chi has provided to us?
This is on Delegate James.
Delegate, you have the floor.
Yeah, Shinale, Ado na fire chief. Ado audience is not thanking. In regards to the questions, there, I'll just start one at a time, and if I can give some follow-up, I think it's best that we just go down one by one. I know some of our questions are being ignored. Some of our information that we sent to Mr. Chi is not being responded to. I really don't know how else to detail it out. But then, if us committee, as the LOC Law and Order Committee, if we can't even get a good detailed report and a response, that gives me an idea of how the whole program is set up. And there's no quick, legible response. And cohort some of the response time is not decent when an emergency takes place or an emergency call is made. Upper administration iki akwat na do hojo ado la edol zinda na nashaz ani the nebana nashite inni that's it na do hojo edol zinda Oyo, that's it. I'm just laid back and just in waiting for time to move and waiting to clock out.
Yeah.
And that's it. 8 day, yeah. That's it. 8 day, yeah. The need ink. I'm trying to find answers of where the seriousness, how important the position is, how the positions that our Navajo people are holding, especially under public safety, under fire district, under EMTs. Why are the positions not taken seriously? And that's where I'm coming from. And we sent our questions, but then we're not getting a good detailed response. Or that's a staff here. You're the staff. You answer this. This is pertaining to you. No, that's it. Questions. Email. That's all. Email. Staff in return with previous PowerPoints, with previous presentations that were done. That's all. LOC, Law and Order Committee. That's in hit. That's it. John hit the middle eight. The Cordona on in Lenny. Also the hostel. That's it. That's it. Ben hit yet here. But though it's a honey glonda, the Cordon hit in there. Nafata is Neliki. Hit Ashi and Nahot Bekita Hunshijo. Hot out, hit Ashi hit the horse Niki. Yakotan is Zinki, Yen hit Ishta, the Yosan Konzat and hit Hodges. Do it over hit out a Kodo, Adolaba, not deal kita. Dodo, a overhoodnita, a hala hata hit nita. Dean hit the net, a hit Ashi in a hot baby kita which region. Naha Hotzotle, Fire District, EMT, Police Department, Naha Hotzotle, beat out. The net, which ends up with the baby kita which she, her job back. Yen, they touching that chagota, the horse net, so lane. Touching Chan Lenigin data saw. She the horse net. Arch the horse orchard. She hot out the horse net and day. Ashing hit a ho fire district, EMT, police department, she budget the hornet. It's a hotel barco in Zen. At then. Or call the boy, yeah. Or call the boy, yeah. 100 for yeah. The Nebanon, the sheet on the Linahalo. Joe could in his Ishana, he hit Olsen, he hit the net and Leniki put out here in his yes here. Hajilla Jotan, no, what are ya yata here? Hashit, a cheaper, but the Hasi town, not on him, he is hard on him, the house, no. Shamaha, Shizaya, she gets it, Hishi, he caught the object on here horn, the Siki. It need ill. Da, no, what yata, quite give us not. Ado Kodo, yada, he don't hit Ishan a day or so. Asto, not so stop a car. Kodo, budget, and not show, not so harder than it. A coco, a lap, this is not Neloto. To quit Ada, to quit our Ishinish and a co. Car washing deed our budget forms at that net. Deed out dust, deed out that these need. Car not as it จะคุดเอาแต่ดินนี้ข้าหน้าเดซิโตข้าหน้านัดโดลิสนาข้าหน้าเดซิโตคุดโดลิสข้าเนเต็นโอโคไอกิโตโอชีเลนินานัสโอโคขัดอีลายอสขัดโดลิสขัดอีลานานโซยอสขัดยินเนสโดลิสนี่เหตุนี้ฉันเช่นโอ้คุดเอา last year but budget yeah the 2-3 years ago yeah oh what up bed now 你เหตุเขดาเนี่ยเขาย่าโอ้หุ่นจริงฮาเลดเอาเหตุเนี่ยเป็นนานนิชเดตัสเซนละฮาเลดเอาเป็นนานนิชเดตัสเองละดีละข้อเด budget forms แต่ปะค่ายดีละตัวโคตรเดฮาเลดเอาเด็กนี่ละคนนั้นเหตุเนี่ยนะฮอตเบบิกิตาหุชีคนอายาดาเสียคนจะนานสอสนาแต่ปะค่ายตัวเป็นสิ่งเดข้าเขาเชียคนดัดก็ขดอนนี่ข้าเขาเชียคนเขาโจดอกสิคนที่ขดอนนั้นสอสันนี่กี่น่าติคิดเล่นหิจน่านิชแล้วอันตัวคนเป็นสิ่งเป็นสิ่งนั้นนัสอันนี้ as a department as a fire district you guys are the ones that fill out the budget forms based off the budget forms is how I've generated my questions. But your answers are not corresponding back to your budget forms, corresponding back to your quarterly goals, corresponding back to your overall performance assessment scores, where you as a program identified yourself to where you should be each quarter. It's not corresponding. Na nestino sindo na nishba hosia. Joshe hot ben nacho kodo na the kid linin hijen na ako. Yeah, I don't de. Sot ya kodo not hajo ben hijen ha o zita. Dina sos baka go. Ashin hot ashin ya ako hot no ashin ya ako no so. Ashin not sos the baka na ha ishla. Ashin ya ako no zin ashin bespa hosen do listen jono shin not sos ka ito li in sene aten. Iot into nan ha shit out kodo na ha shnet do list. Kodo plan order committee do tasita do nana. Kanas na lebat hat the shahaki.
I wanted to know if you guys should say Albuquerque tonight because the traffic is horrendous on I-40.
Can we please hang up on the people who do not have their phone on mute? You are interrupting a delegate who is speaking and who has the floor. I apologize for that, Shanella. Honorable Vince James, the floor is yours.
Okay, Shanella. Ako that hashit out kodon he ka dish was not ani beshban sa ani hot out shitilia. Height out kodo the nesha that is nelly not han net band dished out. Height out bes na hot dishne. Kodo the nepich na hot do na hot baby get a huishijo. Do kot out ha elia dan nini. Cha lini today yo ebenak is to does lini la hit aho konie sa lini ki kodo ben hadis as fire district as EMT as a police department hide out kodo ne okot out but away be yajin khishin yo nini but aren't the in not sahiki hide out bes na hodishne akwa again ha jos le Khalid an hikadish was la Khalid kodot konet kohon shane the son his ankadis la chin so aten nan so send the ot into nada baka
ado hit aho da ben hit ha zo zi hot a hit ina so sin ni hit not hun na da la ko ya sa to na hit ha ne zi ho hot an hinanes il inde dig it ot in don hit hot hit in hika di los hit out ya ko na ha na ho na di sil les hit in na ho na na it ni ke to les so di na has ko be hanas tin na ho yan le Canada Fire District le go ya Delacan go ya besin da de lo the snow be hanas ha de da le Kodona Nation Sil Chidibik is an Anegi Fire District EMT Eba Haten ha de ya Kodo Canada Fire District Department Yika EJ ha de ya Jono Asiga Chidina zone anahot it chidi hitini deo Asina Asiga na zone atahas kid aten Deed al cotton chicha di nido deed al cotton ed what di nene it or di net on the sneak sate. Do a date either. Ashi ohana hito listened a Ganado Fire District of Pachita Sazindo in the Nana Kodona Nation Fire District, Pachita Sazon in the a olia a car at the in the a dance on the a cotton alwo a hot chita hitanes the hot a ahones ahigo hot be el kan jitja adole adon se da shati no da ye tse be na ni tien se hotat go ba khaten nazlen de Canada Fire District ho ya nana khad lechin li la ni yeten khad la chin li khad la na foundation besil le la khad joti na has ko na le go ya hona hot ejedito white kong Indian Wells, Delacan, Guya, Nahol, Ostada, and Jono, Tata E. Jin, Jono, Tata E. Shin, Hinat Army Wings, Shin La, the twin arrows, the Kenyat E. Johnny Nit, Kadla Anta do Lesne. Do Les Wings, the net or had Ishiban, Na stay, Kadedo Tan, hit no Hona Hot, Delacan. Indian Wells, Arjit Art and it has Aniki Echo, but the days in Anahot ile hodan le Canada Fire District ade asa Canada Kase Hajila Navajo Nation Fire District yeah la Haja Navajo Nation EMS la Haja EMTs la Haja at the house kai the law land ala ta wala na Hajila or state ala saha ko de Canada Fire District traffic control the ade Salala ta holon Hajila or state to teach our A what inan so hatishla don ishla fire chief ndani ko yeah net dot in do what in hijana in don the different staff from different district from different your different staff from throughout the Navajo Nation whatever their PowerPoint is their presentation a day la ya a day ya hije konada la ko supplies list of May 2020 the Bacau. That was almost 6 months ago. Where are we at on that? So the way I understand is that the information you sent me is those supplies can last for almost 6 months. So that tells me why do I have to advocate for supplies for the Navajo Nation Fire District, for Navajo Nation EMTs? Just 6 months will be on so what it supplies listing nanes in on hije konada la ko so konahot have budget ba na hot go ha shi these are supplies the bakao das so these are the supplies that we need the bakao based on how she la the bakao hot atas so the bakao so My understanding would be that you have supplies that can last for 6 months. If those are the documents that you submitted to us, picture documents that you forward to us as an oversight committee. That's it. You're working with your staff throughout the Navajo Nation. You're getting feedback from them. Are they serious about them buying their own supplies? Sometimes we don't have the supplies and we have to buy it. Based on it's law and order committee. Has aneki kodo na adit stolis. Nahat kodo na ini kantolis. Jokot na anashiki it eko. That's it. We have to reclassify some of these positions. Kwaiki dan has aneki. Okot that's it. Liago ayat. Are you overloaded as a fire chief? Do you have too much duties? Is the Navajo Nation too large for only one fire chief position to be created? How can we alleviate as much as we can, even to the response times to any emergencies that are called in? There's not going to be that much high vacancy. What's the reason? Or you just reworded the same words that I typed in. What is the problem to try and fill these vacant positions? Is it the hourly rate? What is the problem? Is it the work site? Can we get some explanation? Can you tell us the reason why you are in that situation? Is there no facility that's available? Or why I mean, I'm trying to help you, and I'm trying to get to a point how I can assist with my colleagues from Law and Order Committee. And with you just recopying my words, I can't get nowhere. I can't help you. I want to help. We want to help. But just not being serious to a response answer is not going to get anywhere. It's not going to solve the problems. And so I really don't know how else to move forward unless you have an idea for me. Unless you can give me some recommendation of how I'll help you guys. But I'll tell you this, I'm not going to sit here and listen to, oh, we need more administrative positions. Oh, we need to do this at administration level. I don't want to hear that. I want to know, how are we assisting at the local level? How can we alleviate the long response time? How can I be of assistant? Chapter now has there's some chapters that have some vacant buildings. Maybe that can be worked out to where you guys we can assist in that way.
to get some kind of a facility out here in the southwestern region for Delicon, Indian Wells, for Greasewood, for cornfields, for Sunrise, for Steamboat, for Poye area, for Jedito area, White Cone area. That's where I'm trying to be helpful. But if we're just going to get a real quick, simple response, fast response, just to say, hey, let's just do this to hush them up, hush up the Law and Order Committee, then it's going to continue to be the way we are currently at. So with that, those are my questions and those are my comments. Chair, Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton, those are colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanala, for your comments and your questions. There was a lot of questions and concerns that were brought up there, so I'm gonna turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chi.
Shanala, these Delgi Elmer Begay.
Good morning, Shanala, Delegate Begay. I'll go ahead and add you to the queue after Mr. Chi answers the questions and the concerns. Mr. Chi?
Okay.
Mr. Chi, second call.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Chi.
Oh, okay, there we go. We did send the email out to the documents that I talked about, and we did answer all the questions. And we've explained in each question where we're at and where the budgets, as example, where the budget exists and where it derives from. And also, the criteria, goals, and objectives that are set each year. We set these goals and objectives in our meetings, and they're set for the districts to meet as a goal on their community. So that was explained. And then also how those criteria work as the numbers. So the only other thing that we can add is those performance criteria, they come directly from the districts, and they report it through the database that we have here in Window Rock, and we collect their data. And there's 5 goal statements that are made every year as far as the forms are Form 2 and our budget. And we go over those, and we go over those every quarter. And then every Wednesday we have our meeting. So that's where we discuss these objectives and goals, where we are, what we're doing, and to ensure that we're complying with the OMB and controllers criteria as far as meeting those goals or measurements. So the numbers have to be a measurement. I mean, if somebody thinks that calls can be measured, calls are different type of calls. As far as emergency calls are all different, and they're not the same numbers every quarter and every month and every day. So the goals and the actual numbers, there has to be a number that can be measured to make sure that we and Navajo Nation Fire Department are meeting those goals and objectives. So that's how they're set up per quarter and on to the fourth quarter. So, but the other question that was raised on top of these other ones is, why are we not hiring as much as we want or as we should be? We the department, Navajo Nation Fire, we develop the positions, we develop the job descriptions, we advertise them, and it's up to applicants, it's up to the community to apply for these positions. And the districts and our office, we go out and recruit. We go out to high schools, we go out to career development fairs, and so that's how we try to recruit new personnel. But a lot of times we do get applicants, they're processed, some of them don't meet qualifications, some of them don't apply, a lot of them don't apply. We're finding out that since the pandemic, a lot of them are afraid to even be on the Department of Public Safety and so on. So there's a lot of negative aspects about becoming a first responder on Navajo Nation. So that includes not only fire, but also in general public safety. We're exposed on a daily basis to not only the coronavirus, but other viruses that are out there. So and so on. So we do advertise. We to get applicants so that we can hire and put new recruits to the academy. So a lot of them do not make it through the academy. A lot of them quit, or they can't handle the physical agility part or the classroom. And so at the end, we like to graduate as many as we can, but a lot of them do not. So unfortunately, that's what we have on Navajo Nation. But we continue to strive and thrive to recruit and get more people on board. So the other question that was raised is how can legislative appointees that can help fire departments, fire EMS, is to visit the fire stations, visit our office over here, and we can have one-to-one meetings and discuss our needs and discuss what we're doing and why we're doing that, and so on. So if we don't get that collaboration and cooperation, we're just at loss and get all these negative questions and observations from we don't know who, by hearsay or whatever. But I don't think that's what we're here for. We're here for the safety of our personnel, for make sure they go on calls safely and return safely, and to help our community. That's what we're here for. And yes, we do need help as far as legislative bodies or legislative representatives. It's stuff that when is somebody going to come here and say, hey, let's sit down and we can learn from each other. We can educate ourselves of our needs, not only on behalf of the Navajo Nation Fire Department, but invite counties, invite the districts to be at the same table and say, hey, we went on this call and we needed this. Then we can help each other. Then we start improving our communication. And that's one way of the help that we need from the legislative bodies across the Navajo Nation. And if you're a part of the fire department, you know that running a fire department is an expensive operation. Everything is high cost, down to turnouts, down to bunker gears, down to extrication, to the trucks are getting expensive and more expensive. And then if you throw technology in there, it gets really complicated. And complicated as far as collecting data, what kind of computers does new vehicles have, and so on. And then, of course, on the other side, there's requirements. We have to meet requirements as far as not only policy, SOPs, but also at the national level. We have to meet those national requirements, specification on vehicles, on training, and so on. So being a fire department, it's not just that the alluding to that we just sit around and clock out and make the money. It's not that. The fire department is not about making money or making a big salary. And it's about going out there and make sure that first responders come back safe and make sure they have the best equipment that they can get to help our community. That's what the fire department is about. And if you can ask other fire departments, not only Navajo, that's what they'll tell you. The fire department is not about making a big salary and so on. It's about helping people and helping ourselves and mentoring others. That's what we're about. So, Madam Chair, I hope I explained some of the questions, email, and what we explained in some detail of those questions and answers. So, but everybody's welcome to come to the fire station, and if you don't understand what a goal is or an objective is and what we're going for, we're more than welcome to sit down and explain this to anybody that wants to know about it. But on the other hand is the counties and the state fire departments that are on Navajo Nation. I'm sure they have a oversight committee. I'm sure they have oversight bodies that they report to, and I'm not sure how they report to the funding agency as far as how they're getting their funding. So that is not shared with us, and we know that they're directly funded under either the county or the state or the local township. So questions about fire or not fire, about EMS and police and what they're not doing or what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm sure the directors or the chiefs can answer those questions more appropriately than myself. So I know we work with all the departments, and we try to work with everybody, not only during emergency, but also in non-emergency situations. So, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Chi. Shanella, Honorable Vince James, was that?
I have a follow-up question, Shanella.
Okay, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Ikehatan Shanella, Madam Chair, Ado Nana Law and Order Committee, Ado Fire Chief. An audience. Excuse me for speaking English, but maybe that way it'll be understood if I can explain it in English and then talking in English. So Mr. Chi, Fire Chief, you indicated that we should go over there and sit down, but I think this is what we're doing. And based off my question is the documents that you provided to us that you shared with us. So let me start with the first one. You've indicated that we shall improve our reaction time no less than 10 minutes per quarter. So my question to that is, where and what response call did you improve yourself in your first quarter, because you've indicated that you would do 10? Where on the Navajo Nation did you accomplish this goal statement that you have done? And the same goes for second quarter, for third quarter, for fourth quarter. These are things that you wrote yourself. These are things that you indicated and you signed on yourself. So what response time have you responded to from learning from the past that it's now less than 10 minutes? And that's the information that we are not getting from you. That's what you're not sharing with us. And going down again, and going further down, I want to know, do all of this goal statement that you've indicated that you signed off on, do each and every firefighter personnel, your fire district personnel staff, do they know of this goal? Do they know that you wrote this? Do they know that they have to accomplish this goal on a quarterly basis? And that's the information that I'm striving to you, and you're not sharing that with us. What kind of data do you have? What kind of data of information? What data source do you have? What kind of response? What are the names of the response? You know, from police department, that's what we got. It was like a 50, 60 page of all the different charges that they could do. And those charges that were claimed by the quarterly basis, they put those numbers into those charges that were given to these individuals that were arrested. So for me, I'm going by what you indicated, what you signed off on. And I don't know why I have to come to you to talk to you about what you've indicated, what you signed off on. You provided that information to us, and I'm doing my due diligence to get that information from you because you provided that information to us already. It doesn't need me to go to your office and sit down and to get this information from you. And the next one, you indicated to increase the number of personnel to adequately respond to an incident. You've indicated that. You've indicated 3 for first quarter, 3 for second and third and fourth quarter. So with that, you said to increase personnel. You've indicated that you have vacancies. You've indicated that we have this much vacancies. Where was that improvement made for the first quarter? In first quarter, were you able to hire 3 personnel that you indicated on here? If not, if it didn't happen in second quarter, then what was the reason for it? And if it didn't happen third quarter, what was the reason for it? Fourth quarter, what was the reason for it? And if this is an ongoing, continuing problem, and if we're just going to continue to shoot fingers and point at DPM and say DPM, 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 then what is the problem with DPM? What is going on? What is it that we need to do? Why wasn't that 3 personnel hired per quarter? Your first, second, and third and fourth quarter. And those go hand in hand and go together with my question that I provided to you. And then the next one, we shall provide 24 prevention safety classes to the community. You indicated that you're going to provide 24 in first quarter. We shall provide 24 fire prevention safety classes to the community. And my question was, what community are you talking about? Which community did you provide these fire prevention and safety classes to? Because you've indicated to me the way you indicated it, that you signed off on is that you're going to go to 24 communities. And which of those 24 communities did you do in first quarter? Which communities did you hit second quarters? Which 24 of them? Because you indicated 24 again. Which 24 communities in third quarter and fourth quarter again? And what kind of prevention, fire prevention and safety, what are the titles of those classes? And this is what I mean. This is where we come as a delegate, we become a middle person to relay this information back to our communities, to tell them, you know what, fire district provided these 24 prevention courses, classes to you guys. And they're helping you as the Navajo Nation. The next one, you've indicated shall provide. Again, you indicate shall provide training for firefighters in-house and state certification. And that's 18 for each quarter. So when I look at your vacancy listings, I'm assuming that all of the personnel that are currently on board that you've hired, all of them should have their state certification. Because when you add up 18, 18, 18, 18, that doesn't equal out to your current positions that you have filled. That's more positions. So that's where my questions are, and I'm trying to find out where are we misunderstanding this information that you're providing to us when it's information that's provided from your office, when it's information that you signed off on. And the next one is shall, again, you indicated shall conduct continuous fire inspection per quarter. You've indicated 18 for each quarter again. Where were the fire inspection done? Where did that take place? And does your district firefighters, are they aware of this information? Are they aware of this goal? So if I were to go to a fire district, one fire district on the Navajo Nation, and when I ask them, you know, what are your 5 goal statements? Can you at least name one? Will they be able to name one to me? Or will their response be, we don't get that information? And so that's where I'm coming from, and I'm trying to get answers from you, but you're not doing it. You're not providing that information to us. And how are we supposed to help you when we're not even corresponding with the program's purpose and performance criteria? And so my other question was, you've also indicated that this application of these objectives and subject is to availability of funds. Where is it that you're lacking funds to meet these objectives, to meet these goals? Where is it that you are needing funds to indicate that statement, that the application of these objectives are subject to availabilities of funds? Where is that you're lacking? Where is it that you're hurting for funds to accomplish your goals, to accomplish your performance criteria? So I don't see why I need to come to your office to go over this information that you've already provided to us. And I don't understand why it would just have to be me to come to you to share this information. I would always think that you would look at it as a perspective as killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But in this case, you're giving 5 lawmakers information at once. the Law and Order Committee. And then if we have more of our colleagues join on the line, you're providing more information to more of us delegates instead of just one coming to your office and telling just one individual. Because you could tell me something different. One of my colleagues comes in, you might tell them something different, and then where does that go again? But I'm glad that we're going over this. And like I said, I apologize to my Afro people for speaking English to get to my point of why I email these questions, why I email this information. I dearly, dearly apologize for speaking and trying to relay and to receive answers in English. I'm sorry that I had to say this in English. Honorable Eugenia Charles Newton. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Shanella. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over at this time to Shanella, Honorable Elmer Begay, and then I'll turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chief. Shanella Elmer Begay.
Okay, Shanella. So, got a pin. I or Kitla Law and Order Committee. Got a condition. I wrote people that are on the line. So, got a condition. I wrote Shanella I believe that Mr. Chi is on the line. I just wanted to elaborate more on what my Delegate James. I need I think Anidia would just pass another budget fiscal year, the year 2022 for one year on Zaga based on Lenicon for travel departments when maybe you did the case I think so. And then on top of it we gave it 3% of wage adjustment salary even Yagi since the Hoskisani for the you has under the cat that was in the other yet of a cat not what all this been here. So other based on meaning that it's probably not in their job description, but Lenas in that case, it's the year when he got those Mr. Chi, even in the office for a long time, see, not seen that. I don't think a hot easy thousand. I don't about just cut them there. I don't know harder than around. I just see that $1,000. I don't. Just sound than I don't. You already know how to do it. You know how to easy. You could have what before. I thought what the other by yet he has in it. You could put nothing that will be. Just on Nick, Jake and Taki Zik uncle. So, the Untitled Chapter. Okay, I done 10 years ago, 12 years ago. You done you could get Navajo lived in 5 acres, right beside this judicial system, judicial center, that's only justice center. I done the gene then from the trade ID caught the rato in that. So we've been trying to advocate that with Kadosh done the exchange. The other that on it they had done the water that the house Hana, Pelishine Kao, Canado fire station. I did not jacket and Dakata, Halita Osa, hot other people hot other donation long so we've been advocating with them even I support that. But that part of it, I think you need to be more involved in it. Is to have a recommendation or any kind of support letter from there. And even to share some data that anything that happens along the road. No, I'm pretty sure you get more data from Ganado, the fire stations. So you could not the car. So anything that's supporting from a community, he could go done. There's nothing done. So from your office, you should advocate more hot agents this community. So no, the letter than could so I ate all this. When I ate along that road to the north, you should have all those data. You should all have some of these any related to your job, fire department. You should be supporting that. Those data, so we can advocate to have that kind of stations, fire department. From this fire department class, 20 hours a day. I did Nana Cateko, is in Yana Kedata. What I did, could they in the house, could even the year. You see there, so on Tarkis and Lincoln. So, that I the not yet, so collecting data and anything that just how my daddy said. You know that I can help out. Know that the office going to come. On there, on the piece of one not this. Hold on to case and here. He did if it's pertaining to your job. Any community to supporting that. You make yourself available, I guess you could say that. But in it on that and so on. So we need some data so the very on though. So it is up at this and so sit down. Chanel, thank you.
Thank you, Shanella, and welcome to the Law and Order Committee meeting today. So with that, Mr. Chi, you have two delegates who have posed concerns and questions. I will go ahead and turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chi. Mr. Chi, I believe you have to do *6. Mr. Chi, are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. You have the floor.
All right, thank you. Just going over the statistics, we have data to answer Mr. Begay's question as well. We have data only on the Navajo Nation Fire Department response. And we collect data on every call that we go on. Districts, they input their data. We have not only the 5 objectives and goals that was talked about that we have data on. We have more than that. We have over 45 different categories of data that we collect on the monthly base and per quarter. So that data is collected and then compiled by the fire captain per quarter. And each district of 8, they send in their data. And so we have spreadsheets that are going every month, almost every day as well, because calls are being collected, data is being collected. That does not just only involve man hours, but also involves training, involves fire prevention classes that's mentioned, inspections that are made at districts, and they even log in their response time, time of reaction, mutual aid, and so on. So that's the data that's being collected and then compiled onto that Form 2 that we keep talking about. And so, yes, all the districts are aware when we start a new fiscal year that they are aware of the budget that we have and where the budgets are, where the funds are allocated, including the Form 2 that we talked about in detail. So the districts know that form is there for them as a guide to look at and use out in their district. So specifically going over the 5 categories that were talked about. Reaction time was collected for third quarter, and the highest reaction time was by SHPRA or OHO, 8.3, and then SHPRA came in 2.4. Chinle came in at 7.7, Fort Defiant 7.6, Window Rock 2.20, Twin Arrows, and those are all added up, and then it comes out to an average amount that we report on the form. And so the same thing happens on turnout per call. It was kind of alluded to that why didn't we hire since we put down 2 as a quarter report. This turnout firefighter data does not reflect how many we hired or not. It only talks about how many firefighters turn out to each call. So every district is different. The lowest was, I believe, like 2.0, 2 people responded. And those are some of the small calls, minor calls, so and so on. So inspections that are made, these are inspections that are made on facilities that are occupied. That's owned by the Navajo Nation. So each district are advised to conduct their inspection at least 1 or 2 per quarter for each district, and that's also collected as data. And so, and then the fire prevention classes and communities, those are classes, again, mentioning the pandemic this year. We had a difficult time trying to teach out there in person. So we did a lot of this via video conferencing or videos. So we had to develop our own class to show the audience that to go through the fire prevention classes. And it looks like Window Rock did a few and SHPRA did a few. So for that quarter, and then education programs for adults and kids, like similar to prevention classes. So those are all amount of classes that were taught, and each district has their own different category. And so again, it was difficult to do classes directly in the class environment. So we had to make other adjustments so that we can reach out to the community. So those are some of the specific areas that's on the Form 2 that was asked about. But again, we have, like I said, over 40 different categories of data that we collect on a quarterly basis, and only 5 are reported as goals and objectives on Form 2 for the budget as far as reporting it back to OMB or funding agency. As far as meetings that that we could be involved in, we like to know where the meetings are and when the meetings are happening, and most of the time we don't know about them. We don't get invited. So yes, we want to be out there and advocate for the community to start at least have some ideas and to share information to possibly put new up fire stations and whatnot. And so we do have a study that's going, and we've been adding on to our original document from 2 years ago that was submitted to this committee as far as a regional plan. And so far, the cost is tremendous per station. So that's where most of the communities back out when we mention the dollar amounts of how much a fire station is going to cost, including not only personnel, but trucks and operating costs and so on. So a fire station must be built so that it can house its equipment, fire station equipment, firefighter equipment, and then personnel. It's built like a home for firefighters to stay at. And so it takes a lot of planning, a lot of time, and these days we understand that the square footage of a building is more than $400 a square foot now. So then it depends on what the size of the building you want. So it can cost upper areas of close to even maybe $3 million, up to $4 million right now to actually build a nice operational fire station, just the fire station itself. That does not include other programs like police or EMS or other DPS programs. So fire stations are unique because of the personnel and their equipment and the hazardous material that they get themselves into, and the type of patient care and the type of response they make. It has to be structured as a fire station, and so it has to be fully equipped and on a 24-hour basis. So yes, we can attend these meetings if we're invited, if we know about these meetings. So that will be some of the information that we have as far as data, and then getting involved and be involved and getting support. So are you there with that, Madam Chair?
Thank you for that, Mr. Chi. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Delegate Vince James and let me start with Delegate Vince James. Delegate Vince James, do you have any follow-up?
Thank you very much, Nella. Yes, I do have a follow-up. And members of LOC.
Shanella, Honorable Elmer Begay, do you have any follow-up questions as well?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have one too.
Okay, so with that, go ahead and turn the floor over to Honorable Vince James with his follow-up questions. And then after that, Honorable Elmer Begay with his follow-up questions. And then I'll turn the floor back over to Mr. Chi. So with that, Chanel, Vince James, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chanel, Madam Chair, and then members of LOC Law and Order Committee, audience. Thank you again. Fire Chief, can you please email those documents, the reporting, the data information to Ms. Lorraine Spencer so she can get that information to us? I believe that we've asked for those documents as well in our questions from the previous meeting when we tabled your report. The way I understood it is that you do currently have those reports on hand. So I'm assuming you can email it within the next 10 minutes or so to Ms. Spencer to provide us those data information on how it assisted you and how it accommodated you with your goal statements and your performance. Thank you, Madam Chair. Shanali. Yeah.
Shanella, Honorable Alma Bigay.
Okay, yeah, Nana. So another other members of the order. Other Mr. Chief. One thing that I wanted to say that is your involvement with Shinigi. I've been with the White Ruins Community School. They have a fire station, fire truck up at the Hello. But most of the time, when they're gonna have any kind of a drill, they usually call Ganado Fire Department, and then also Sanders. And then there's one out in one at the valley. There's a Sanders guy. They're the one that comes in or calls for like any drills that they can do. They're really active like that. And although the schools, they have these drills go nowhere. They don't even say Navajo Nation. The drill, the fire station. Wonder I don't need that. I don't know that because there's any training coming in. They usually the Ganado Fire Department, Sanders, they come out to the schools and they really participate during that time. So it seems like in Navajo Nation, then you guys are not even participating on something like that. I don't got a fire department, fire station, nobody goes over there to help the schools too. I think what you should start doing is how you can help out these, maybe a network or with these schools, that Edo, these Ganado fire station, that they to be more active about it, to be in the same data. You need to have more data for us. You won't. If I ask for data over here in Dakhan, you won't even have any because you don't come out here. You can download that. I think you should get more to look at to see how many the scenes that happens. Maybe you can provide those. I think you need to be more involved in it with these schools, and then schools. So I think you need to give us more report on how the plans of how you can be coordinating with these Navajo Nation fire station now on the reservation in this community now. You're contacting them. Also, you're just isolated in the central area. Then they not got this. Those live at the sea, the those know that the cat Halit. But I am talking that that's called jail. So that's talking that there's going to be a kind of a plan that I would like to hear from you. It is another. I did have this.
Thank you for that, Shanella Elmer Bigay, Shanella, the Honorable Vince James. So with that, Fire Chief Chi, the floor is yours.
Oh, can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
Oh, we can hear you.
No, I was trying to email that data that was asked for, so I'm trying to multitask here. Yes, we have the districts to coordinate with the districts out there, and they are advised to work with not only BIA, but also other fire districts in the area as their response area. So like the counties and McKinley, San New Mexico, and so on. What they do is they'll report that in their quarterly report as well, as far as meetings and the type of meetings they went on and how many. So again, if they're not aware of any meetings or any training or even requests, then that is not reported. So that we could work together and start working together, sharing information and so on. So let's see. Sending the two data PDF files as we're talking. I'm send it to Lorene right now. Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chi. Did you get the documents that Mr. Chi is referencing? Lorraine?
Madam Chair, I haven't received it yet.
Oh, Mr. Chi, did you send them already?
I was trying to go through it right now. It should have went through, Madam Chair.
Lorraine, did you get a copy? As soon as you get that copy, Lorraine, can you please send that out to the committee members as well as Delegate Elmer Begay. We also have Delegate Daniel So, Delegate Jamie Hanyo. And if you could also send a copy to Office of Legislative Counsel as well. While we're waiting on the copy, are there any other questions or comments at this time from any of the delegates who are on the line?
Delegate James here again. Since nobody else.
Anything, Delegate Vince James, is this a new question or is this a follow-up?
Just a follow-up.
Okay, the floor is yours, Janela.
I had Nana Shinalit, Madam Chair, and then LLC committees, ado audience that is not again. Fire Chief, so when we do receive the email, that information will correspond with your performance standards, correct? Your performance criteria? Or do we have to go one by one and have your explanation on where it affects the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter?
The one I sent you is just for the third quarter, because the Form 2 has all the other information. So we'll have to go backtrack and find the other quarters if that's what you need. Oh, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, I cut out there for a little bit. I don't know if the question was answered. Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know what happened the last maybe about 15 seconds. Delegate Vince James was asking his question and then it cut out for a little bit on my end. Janella, Honorable Vince James, was your question answered? Hello, Janella?
Now that Madam Chair, my question was, with the email that we're receiving, how does that correspond with the performance criteria? That was my question. And then also, I would have a new question, but that's if no other Law and Order Committee has new questions or any of my colleagues. Thank you.
Fire Chief Chi, the floor is yours to answer the question.
Yeah, what I said was the third quarter only. We'll have to backtrack on the second and the first quarter to send those if that's what the committee wants. So I did send the third quarter, and the question was, will they correspond? Yes, these are the ones. What you're looking at for each district above is where the reports are coming in from, and you'll see those numbers all the way down, and then they're added total over to the right column, and that's where your Form 2 will come in. It will correspond with those numbers, those 5 specific objectives and goals. Madam Chair?
Honorable Vince James, do you have any other questions?
Shanade, yes, I do. I do have other question. Okay, Shanade.
Honorable Vince James.
Okay, so this is going to, I brought up the issue regarding the Southwest region and Delicon, White Cone, Jedito, Greasewood. I know that it's not my area, but I really want to know about the Twin Arrows. Twin Arrows, I know there was funds that were set aside last year to purchase supplies and furnitures and equipment. And then also done training and professional in the amount of $410,000, and that's just for Twin Arrows. After reviewing that, it looks like it hasn't been spent yet. Is there a reason why?
Fire Chief Chi.
Madam Chair, committee members, 410,000 would be a bonus or a great feeling to get that amount of money from Twin Arrows. I'm afraid that would be not our program getting that money or funds, or if it was an unmet need, we didn't receive that for the fire department. The only funds we get from Twin Arrows is the 75,000, which we're under an agreement with Twin Arrows to provide services to the casino using those funds as far as operational activities. only operation activities. We used to fund a position under Twin Arrows as a firefighter position, but the 75,000 is not even enough to hire a position and operating supplies. So what we're doing is we're funding positions over there under the Navajo Nation. We support the casino, and then also just using that 75,000 to as the operating cost. So, and that's Twin Arrows, and we didn't get the 400,000. I don't know who or where that money went. Madam Chair.
Danella, Honorable Bench James, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Fire Chief, so in regards to Twin Arrows, where do we currently get services provided for Loop, Bird Spring, Delcon, Tisto, Jedito, Indian Wells, White Cone, Jedito? Where did those communities get services when there is a need for Navajo Nation Fire? Or how does the Navajo Nation Fire District provide service to those communities? Thank you.
Fire Chief T, the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Those area mentions are either coming from Delcon with an engine or rescue unit into Loop and Delcon, and also from Chinle. They will respond up towards Ganado, and if they need to, they can go into Steamboat and those areas of Indian Wells and so on. Understanding that Ganado doesn't make themselves as a district to cover that area, so we coordinate with Ganado as far as response. A lot of times what we're facing is one area that we would need help with, is since we're trying to help each other here, is we need help as far as a complete operational E911 system on Navajo Nation. Most of the calls in these areas that are mentioned, we don't get the call. We don't get any notification from local PD or EMS from the Navajo Nation. And we also don't get called out from Ganado or Prickle Valley, so until maybe it's way too late, and then we show up as a second on scene. Most of the calls are like that in that area. So going back to a complete enhanced 911 system would really help us, and to make sure that all the calls are coming into one dispatch center, and that will cover a regional area. Right now, that's not happening, and it just goes into let's say for Windorah, it just goes into Windorah area, and the rest of the communities are left out. So that's our current issue, as far as it's been ongoing for years, and all we hear is that, yeah, we're going to get it done next year or 5 years, and I believe it's going on maybe 25 years and it hasn't happened yet. So, and I'm aware that most of other communities are going through the same issue as far as dispatching and an actual 911 system, which we don't have. So that's one area that we really need help to coordinate at least a fire response, and help each other with other districts and counties, and also police and fire and EMS. Madam Chair.
Thank you for the response. Before I go back to any more questions from Honorable Vince James, are there any other committee members or any other delegates who want to ask questions at this time?
Madam Chair,
Honorable Eugene So, the floor is yours.
that all seasons stand. After job bekehan so why us council delegates are elected. The con city the Christmas on for the eyes, ears, and feelings and voice of the people. They to issue all your issues. Steady confidentiality as a judge in the needing that behind the ila and a hot hat, ila and a hot hat, ishbin and a hot hat, ila jihos. A crack, Nishin said not so for can, and we can put it into legislation, we can drop it. You see, company in a hot. There's only those make a law or amend some laws in the Navajo Nation Code. You see, in hot and now hot the very same hot that is made. Hot ila and hot ila language. If there's any language, no. What's the issue on that language? Is there limitation? Is there ila, dollar-wise, etc.? We cried up the on the car, do ya show the episode to this in for the Yashunda, for ye has on. No, the Eba has in the old terms go to that language and revise it, remend it. It's a bit of it on $8 to a vacations a cody corner hard club basement has on the don't order are craig the listening on across the Navajo Nation. All year corner hot has on in each chapter. So the young city destined has been because it's by the chain of command, they rather go to the health, education, or resource development or budget. Budget art need and also art education. So John should come it would be better. I need indeed, and it's not that the hard that the actually don't. So hold a listening to the hot, I had what they call the hot ego, a corner the $100. So what the net business under you could on his seat, we got loan all the day. Say that will cost it a Madam Chair.
So with that, thank you for your concerns, Honorable. So yes.
Madam Chair, question that please.
Yes, I hear that too. Can the administrator please delete or hang up on the person who is making those calls? Again, the Law and Order Committee has a zero tolerance rule. If you cannot mute your phone, then you cannot be on this call. There is no reason to be interrupting the presenters, and there is no reason to be interrupting the delegates as they address the concerns within their communities. Can the committee host please delete the person or hang up on the person who cannot mute their phone? I apologize for that, Honorable Eugene So. The floor is yours.
Of course, you see because you need you change your happy. They share all portion in the hot isn't or using in the hot egg shipping Jabaka Bacana il Kikish. Coin last since you pay a card at the Honda House job, which I told me to egg shipping your eat. Cocodo isn't kid had in the house children. What law is really affecting your funds? Where do you need funds if you need funds? What laws like any of these MOAs, MOUs? Is there, like I said, is there a limitation? Is there a fund-wise limitation? double car I about staff I would like we would I can't as a law and order would like to see those memorandum of agreement. What kind of agreement do they have with who, the county, state, whatever? Any on go show credit in the hot it does not credit I have a chance credit this I give credit chance that our funds are hot and our funds are hot and it's next door to hold yeah. So that we will know what language we can go after, and we can bring those people, whoever make the MOADG lie, and we can debate with it on them and agree on something. Because these are our the way why we are elected. So there are boundaries also because district, and that means that what law we should use this on a district. Pretty sure it might be the county or the state. You should district a chapter or district a chapter or any I guess it's the same thing. I don't know. So those are some of the things that we need to look at. County so we have to go by some of the counties too. These generate Apache County 3 districts. Put that case in there. That's our 8 fire departments in there. So those language, we would like to know what language is really not coinciding with the Navajo Nation code, and how we can resolve that. Those are the things that we need to look for. I like to help, but I would like to know what this issue, what the laws or what regulation or needs to be changed, or would it make a new one, and so we can start using that to applying it, and then lawmakers, Navajo Nation code, the council delegates, even end up with Israel. So we need that, and we need director or any people that's going to report to us. What is the issue? Give us that, or give us a paperwork where it says correcting language in the whole. Can you change it for us? Based upon so she had launched I know it's been originally she has National Port Service, they have a car, Lin Contreras, or that's a visual car, later signed, there's nothing over car, on the Great Fire Department, across the high school, so I'm the so what the vision in your report. So, Street or she had thank you.
Thank you for that, Shaja, Honorable Eugene. So I know that you have said those words to this committee several times, and I think that those are the questions that as a committee we have asked, is that we're giving funding to these programs, and we're asking why these services are not being delivered. So as the oversight, we have the right to ask that question. And then what you said, what can we do to change the laws, or what can we do to try to help? I believe Honorable Vince James also asked that question, and I don't think it has been answered. So I think we are in order with the questions that are being asked at this time. And then I think, about the how we all interpret our responsibilities and duties as a delegate. I've said it before and I'll say it again. That's the $1 million question is, as delegates, what is our responsibility? What is our job duties? And we know what we can't do. And so I think we try to abide by those rules. So I think, again, Honorable Vince James is trying to ask those questions. What can this committee do to help the fire department? Because we have been hearing concerns that coming from community members regarding the services that the fire department is doing or not doing. So with that, Shaja, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over at this time to Mr. Chi to maybe answer that question Mr. Chi, which Honorable Vince James has already asked. What can this committee do to help you with the manpower, with the services that are not being provided to our Navajo people? What can we do to assist you so that you can provide better services to our people? Mr. Chi.
Okay, Madam Chair, can you hear me? Are you there?
Mr. Chi, we can hear
Madam
you.
Chair?
I can hear you.
Yep. One thing that can really help the fire department is support, not only at the local level, but at the legislative level, as far as going forward, obtaining more equipment, new fire stations, additional manpower that we need. A history, a little bit about the fire department, Navajo Nation itself. It was developed years and years ago in early 80s as a volunteer department. And they only responded to calls if that volunteer was available to go on calls. And the only station was here in Window Rock. So Window Rock responded to Chinle, Tuba City, all over. And just imagine, it took hours to get to a call. So Navajo Nation Council supported through a local grant that back then, I guess they really had money. And they built fire stations across the Navajo Nation. And there was one built in Tuba City, one built in Ganado, one built in Chinle, Window Rock, Fort Defiance, Shiprock, and also some in the county like Crown Point. So that's how it started. Really, just with a volunteer, maybe not even a truck, just maybe they responded in their POVs with no funding. And years after that, they finally got notice. They gave them a little bit of operating budget, and one person per station was hired, and they still didn't have enough funding. So what they did is they went into talks with the county and the state. And so that's where McKinley County put up their fire stations in some of these areas on the New Mexico side. And that also happened with San Juan County, because they had the money, they had the support as far as operational and manpower. And also that happened to Ganado, and that was taken over by the state. And that's how Ganado became a district. And of course, Kayenta became the same, also was one of them. So today we only have 8 fire stations to operate, and we barely have enough funding to operate those 8 fire stations, because since 1980s, 90s, up to last 3 years, we didn't have the funding. We asked for one-time funding, we applied for grants, and we got grants from the state, and that's how we managed to get some of the SCBAs and turnouts. And so we were kind of left behind, and just on the way to that's how we operated. So now we have a little bit of funding, and we want to keep building on what we started, meaning replacing all the outdated trucks, outdated gear and SCBAs and PPEs and whatnot. And the other thing that was forgotten was the facilities. These buildings were built in the early 80s. And we're barely getting to renovate at least one building now. After 2 years of funding, good funding, and we have plans to go through most of the old buildings that are, imagine all their wiring and their structure and their foundations are outdated, not in code no more. So we have a lot of work to do. And so we've managed to replace some of the trucks that you see out there, and that's a very minute improvement that we've done. And so we have quite a ways to go. And I mentioned Kayenta and Ganado and McKinley on Navajo Nation operating their fire stations through MOAs. The MOAs is not an issue. The MOA is always a document that we can look at. We can negotiate on that MOA, and that as long as we have that automatic aid among other fire departments and other fire districts. Currently, we're operating as you see it. Yes, we do receive complaints, lack of response time or no response, and I gave you a couple answers to that. Is a Navajo Nation-wide emergency dispatch center. That would be one solution. The other solution is advocate more funds for new facilities for Navajo Nation Fire Department. And I know that there's a document that was submitted through the ARPA funds for public safety, and fire department is a part of that plan. And I understand that there's 15 new fire stations that are to be built with other programs in the same building. So that could be another support that we need from this committee so that we can move forward. And as far as personnel, we do need additional personnel to hire. As far as we are aware that McKinley County, San Juan County, Utah, and New Mexico, and of course the township fire department, the county fire departments are, including Ganado and Perco down in the state, they are very underfunded. We understand that. And just because of the coronavirus that hit us last almost 2 years now, that made it very, very difficult to operate and to ensure first responders are safe out there. And so the counties are, yes, they are also really underfunded to provide the services that they should be providing. We hear personnel are not there no more. They're leaving. The equipment is really suffering. The trucks are suffering. Another support would be from this legislative body is to approach the state, approach the counties to say, hey, we need more support from you guys for this district, for this, to give them more money or get them new equipment. So that's one way that this committee can help Navajo Nation fire protection across Navajo Nation. So, those are some of the things that could be, supported. Madam Chair?
Thank you for those recommendations, Mr. Chief. So with that, committee members, are there any other questions or comments at this time?
Chair.
Honorable Eugene Sell, the floor is yours.
Diko on it in each in the hot either. I just sent a mail to Dana. I don't know if she got it, to draft legislation, how we can enforce all the fire department across the Navajo Nation is needed. Basically, banded on it as a bandit is around. Also, look at the memorandum of agreement that need for these counties. Aid of it, the card job. So reinforce it all. Are you? Ecuador is hinge kid on this, Madam Chair. So,
I'm sorry, Eugene, what are you drafting a legislation on?
so across the Navajo Nation, Christians in the Navajo Nation Fire Department, at the end of our we need to start looking in that route and try to reinforce all the fire department at issue has by the space of fire trucks it's needed out there where we're growing. Even now, a legislation to drop it all. So a Dana, which was found that to drop it all. So Ecuador, but chief has chief of the bean scales that support about the agreement between the counties. The aid of reinforce, but it's really to be reinforced that they need a bacala, not a bacala, or we need to read with them and try to help them what's in there, what we need from our district. That's two things I would like to request maybe a director to a Dana Nikata with the draft legislation, and also to the fire chief to come up with all these MOUs, and it all had in across the Navajo Nation some numbers reports of what we need across the Navajo Nation with the each fire department. It's our scale because we had to do it sometime. Without what I need to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Honorable Eugene. So my question to you, Eugene, is which pot of money are you looking to help the fire department with?
I was thinking, but before it goes up, maybe the ARPA fund is have to use the living foundation. Otherwise, we might have to go to other routes. But as long as that money is still there, it's needed. We might fight for it, but we need to get into that ARPA fund with this fire department.
Honorable Eugene, so I believe Mr. Chi said that money has already been requested from ARPA through public safety. And we did drop legislation for public safety, but Troy Cook, are you on the line?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm listening in.
Troy, can you remind me the legislation that I dropped for public safety, is that only for the police stations, or did we include fire department in that as well?
I believe at this point, Madam Chair, it was regarding public safety for the police departments and the associated branches under them.
Okay. All right, then I think we're, Mr. Chi, if you can prepare those documents. Honorable Eugene So is willing to sponsor that legislation to request for ARPA money. So if you could work with Mr. Eugene So on that request. Thank you, Troy.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
So with that, committee members, are there any other questions or comments at this time?
Delegate James here.
Delegate James. Delegate James, and then Chair Henyo.
Madam Chair, other members of LOC and audience, other fire chief. Kwado, I do have, after you talking about certain things, there are some more questions. Well, before, I don't even know where to start, but let me start with Twin Arrows. Let me start with Twin Arrows, and you have it budgeted at 75,000, and that was what we approved for you. In the documents, there's no personnel. Where are you funding that position for Twin Arrows? Are there any positions that are at Twin Arrows. So is that under, is your personnel for Twin Arrows, is that under your business unit number for Twin Arrows, part of the 75,000? Or is your personnel for Twin Arrows under your overall 1% tax revenue? Is that where Twin Arrows personnels are? And back to your performance for this fiscal year, your performance criteria, goals, statements are the same for Twin Arrows Station and the Navajo Nation, your 8th district that you requested for. So I'm trying to understand for Twin Arrows how that could be the same as the Navajo Nation if Twin Arrows is this one facility in itself. So your performance criteria for Twin Arrows has 24 classes that you're going to provide. And then you also have 18 that that will also get to have the standards for professional qualification for firefighters need. And so I don't think there's that many personnel that you have there at Twin Arrows. So, and you do also have that you're going to meet the 10 minutes response time. Those improving the response time to 10 minutes per quarter, is that just for the Twin Arrow facility response? Or are you including Loop and Bird Spring, Delicon, those areas? Is that part of your criteria here? So when I start looking at what we are initially talking about, these budget here, I'm trying to comprehend how they correspond and how you guys created your budget. I don't know if you created it. I don't know if it was done as a team, or if it was your administrative assistant or your secretary that just did the budget and you guys just ran with it. So that takes me back to my next question is, I really want to know what your response times are for those communities that I named, for Jedito, for Whitecomb, for Tisto, for Delicon, for Indian Well, Bashbito, not Bashbitos, yeah, Bashbito and Bitahochi, and then going towards Winslow, going towards Loop area, Bird Spring. And the way I understand, you indicated that when I asked you who is the which district responds to emergency to those communities, I believe your answer was Chin Lee. So if it is Chin Lee, then what is the response time from Chin Lee to Delicon area, to Bird Spring area past Delicon? What is the response time from Chin Lee to Tisto? And what is the response time from Chin Lee to Jedito, to all of these communities that I named? And my next question is going to be, who is the actual fire department? Which fire department does actually respond to these communities? And so let's put it on record. Who actually does respond to these emergencies that happen on N15 past grease whipped into Delicon, who actually does respond to these emergency calls. And I'm glad that you also indicated that you don't police department don't work well with you. And that has been a continuous problem. And I hope our division director, Jesse Delmar, is on the line. And we've brought this issue up, just not myself, but my colleagues. We brought up issues regarding dispatch. How is dispatch getting the information out to the fire department? And you just indicated that the communication is not there from dispatch or the police officer to the firefighters. And so that is one of the areas, I think one of the key areas that we need to understand. How do we move forward on becoming a reliable dispatch, just like our counties and our state? And the county and the state dispatch is not as good as Window Rock District dispatch. And I think it's like that with all of dispatch throughout the Navajo Nation. And so there's this tremendous amount of questions that I have that you brought up more. And I'm glad that we're doing this report, because it gives me more information on, okay, how is it that I can prepare myself when I do this, when I do set up and schedule a time to meet with you. That way we're not all over the place. I'm not all over the place asking questions and pretty much trying to stay to the topic here. So what I've inteled and what I've understood from all of this is that based on the data, I will compare the budget amount versus response time that you are providing to us. At the same time, Window Rock Fire District does not work with PD. Only fire district who assists police department is Ganado and Navajo, Pine and Perco. And so then the understanding is, if I understood this wrong, that Window Rock Fire District works only 8 to 5. And so that's another question that I have. And my next one is going to what I've intel from all of this report is who is commissioning the new firefighters? Are they even commissioned by or within the state? Police department has no response from Window Rock Fire Department. Window Rock has a dispatch in Window Rock, but no personnel to take call. County, state are pretty much reliable when it comes down to it. From my understanding is what I'm getting to is that, you know what, Window Rock dispatch, police department, Window Rock dispatch is not reliable is the way I have things noted down here. And so, what is the solution? Do we need to elect a new fire chief? Do we need to have 2, 3 of them to ensure and update the position that it requires? What are the credentials for those positions? And so do we need to move in that direction? And then I looked at your documents again, and then on there it indicates that you have 48, what did it say? 48 step increases to eligible employees, but yet you don't have 48 personnel staff. You don't have 48 people on board compared to what you email back. And So that's something that I really would need to talk to and discuss with you as well to try to comprehend what these reports and these documents that have been provided to us is trying to, and what you're trying to state with your staff and your team there. I didn't see, I know you indicated recruitment, but I didn't see no information on how there is active recruitment that are taking place. Practically, there's just no active recruitment that are taking places. And well, this is a new question that just arose, and I don't know how well this is true, but fire department from Gallup had to respond to 2 fires at St. Michael's housing. And I believe both homes were destroyed. And so why did this happen? Why do we have Gallup Fire Department coming into St. Michael's? And that's a big concern, because on your goal and your statement, you indicated that you want to make that achievement of 10 minutes response time. You want to respond within 10 minutes, and Wendouront and St. Michael's are not that far apart. They're not really distant from each other, where Wendouront Fire District is at. And you have sales tax that are earmarked and specified just for fire district. And if Wendouront Fire District is one of your high populated area, with the statistic and the data information that you provided, if that's one of your areas that is really high in calls, then I would assume that your sales tax, that you would update those fire equipments right away to get into compliance with the standard laws and the regulations and all of that. So another one is your 2x City issue that is happening at 2x City. Why do we have volunteers quitting left and right over there? What is going on over there? Are paid firefighters not doing the job, or are they abusing the system? What is it that's going on in 2x City? And yeah, I understand they probably quit for not getting paid, but what is it that we are doing as Navajo Nation Fire Department to recruit those individuals that are on volunteering base? What is the hiccup? Why can we not get these individuals that are volunteering to fill these positions that are vacant? And so 2x City is constantly being informed and getting calls of emergency response, but who writes these reports? Is it the volunteers that write these reports, or is it the paid personnel that write these reports? I know it's a learning criteria thing for these individuals, but if they're volunteering, then why are we not hiring them? Are we not giving them Navajo Nation application, or is it that the qualification for the position is too high that they can't get into these positions? And so I think all of our fire districts are in that same scenario, that they have volunteers. We have our Navajo children that are volunteering and have their high hopes that they might get hired. They might become on the personnel paid payroll system. And so do we need to reclassify these positions to get these volunteers into those positions? And so I stand to you, and I kindly request, how are we doing this recruitment? How are we doing these positions that are all vacant. And so do the fire chief's positions, do they require a bachelor's with a background in firefighting and so forth? Does that require it? And so if so, then maybe we need 2, 3 of them for the Navajo Nation to cover the whole majority area. And I just say this because we are always compared to other states. The size of the Navajo Nation is compared to other states. And within those states, how many fire chiefs do they have? And these large counties, how many fire chiefs do they have? And so that's where I'm trying to find answers. And it's like, do we need to have more than one fire chief to resolve a lot of these concerns, issues? I mean, I know that in everything that is done, there's always concerns, but how do we eliminate majority of those concerns? And when you start listening and when you start hearing these concerns, it's like, it's regarding dispatch, it's regarding response time, it's regarding the way the job was done, the way the system is set up. So do we need other fire chief positions throughout the Navajo Nation? And so that's where I stand with this whole overall report and the documents that you provided to us. That's where I come down to all of these questions that I have listed, and I will stand by getting in contact with you and sitting down and getting information and try to help. It's all I'm trying to do is, how can I help you? And I can't really draft a legislation. I can't really type up a legislation, help my legal advice, our legal attorneys to draft the legislation if I don't have these information. And so how do we resolve these issues? How do we improve the actual goal statements that you've indicated on your performance criteria, your program criteria? How do we actually get to that point? So and when it comes down to it, I'm always I'm always listening. I'm open ears, and that's just me. That's who I am. And some of them, some of your previous staff come and say, they ask, how can we terminate the fire chief? How can we terminate this? Because nothing's going on, nothing's happening. I'm trying to resolve a lot of these issues, and I hope you will work with me to move forward on trying to be of an assistant to you as being the Navajo Nation Fire Chief of the Navajo Nation. I just hope that Mr. Jesse Delmore was listening, and I hope that he will work with us to set up some times and places to meet as well. So, thank you very much.
Chair Hanyo.
Madam Chair, Charles Liu, Law and Order Committee. Chief, I just wanted to clarify something earlier. Eugene had the floor and was requesting for legislation to assist the fire department with possibly some ARPA money. And Mr. Cook responded that he would draft legislation, but we need to look at the legislation that was recently passed by Budget and Finance. And that was a legislation that responds 172-21, which is now, I believe, BFC AU something 21. But I'll take a look at that, Mr. Cook, and that way you can provide guidance as far as applying for the ARPA money. Because right now it's an application process that each of the 4 entities across the Navajo Nation could apply, and it's a 2-part application. One is the application itself and the needs and the uses of it. Then the second part is the actual forms. And so I thought that's submitted by the Navajo Nation entities like the fire department that she could work on if he is indeed looking at ARPA money to fulfill some of the needs that he has. That is in regards to the parameters set by ARPA. The second one is a Navajo LGA certified chapters. The third one is Navajo non-LGA certified chapters. And then Navajo Nation owned entities. And of course, there's 5 federal and outside entities. And these are the 5 entities that are eligible to apply through the ARPA funding. And so the Line Order Committee, if you would take a look at that. And then so that way when you have to decide to assist, you could direct the entities that way to do the application process. And then it's vetted internally within the Navajo Nation. And then from there, once applications are received, and that's when the expenditure legislation becomes into play. And then from there, we can start utilizing the funding. I want to point that out, Madam Chair. Although Mr. Chief, you'll also take a look at that. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Chair Henyo, for that valuable information. You were kind of going in and out with the information, but I'm sure Troy got that information and he can share that with the committee as we start to propose projects that are coming down the line for public safety. So we appreciate that information. So with that, Mr. Chi, I'm going to turn the floor back over to you for a response and also questions or answers to the questions that were raised. Thank you.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and committee members and the audience. I'm aware that we have over 30 to 40 listeners. I appreciate the support that I get when I approach this committee. I can say that. Can you hear me, Madam?
Hang up on, I believe that was Delegate Elmer Begay, who interrupted the presentation. Whoever that was, can you drop them from the line, please? Mr. Chi, I'm sorry about that. The floor is yours.
Thank you again. I appreciate the support from the legislators that have spoken and showing us a little bit of the light that we can also follow. And then also the support comments and how we should work together and how we should also as a team to start building Navajo Nation Fire Department. I appreciate that personally. And I do not appreciate when my job is being threatened to remove or terminate the fire chief is being talked about. I wish those or that person would come to my office and tell me that in my face. That is uncalled for. And I do have my staff here on the line as well. And they dislike those kind of comments that are being made. And I personally do not appreciate that. And LOC has asked me to come before this committee. And this is the second time. And every time that at least in my presentation, there's a initial agenda that's developed, and then it just kind of snowballs after that, and it's the same thing over and over and over. And every time we submit data, we submit information with dollar amounts, we submit plans, and it seems like either they dislike it, just the way that they talk, or they don't want to listen to what we have to report.
Right there. And I'm going to ask you to twice about the way that you talk to this committee. We ask questions and we ask for information based on information that's coming in from our constituents and from the community. So I'm going to ask you to have a little bit of respect for your lawmakers at this time. This is going to be your first and your final warning.
Madam Chair, that is fine. That's totally fine. I wish that it would go both ways, and that we are here to work with anybody that has questions.
I'm going
to Delegate James.
Time, and we're going to have you for this committee again
Can you hear me?
At a separate time, so that you can properly address this committee with the concerns and the questions that we have. So at this time, Mr. Chi, before
Madam Chair, I can't hear you. You're really static. Hello?
Lorraine, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Right. As long as you can hear me and we are on the record, I will not stand for any disrespect to this committee or the questions or concerns that are raised here by any delegate, as we are elected officials who represent the communities that we come from, and we represent the entire Navajo Nation. So any type of disrespect that is coming down the line, I will address, and I will ask you, Mr. Chi, to calm down and to address this committee at a separate time. Committee members, it is up to you if you want to continue with this report or if we should table the report for a separate date.
Motion to table, Delegate James.
There is a motion to table the report. Can I get a second?
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that, Shajav, Honorable Eugene. So with that, committee members, we're going to go ahead and table this report. We're going to ask that Mr. Chi take some time to think about the report and the questions that are being posed. I'm going to ask the committee members to go ahead and send questions to Mr. Chi, and we're going to invite him to the next Law and Order Committee meeting. With that, Mr. Mose, can you help us and can you assist this committee with the roll call vote to table this report?
Yes, Madam Chair. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green.
Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So. Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So.
I vote green.
Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Chair, I voted 3 in favor, 0 opposed for tabling this report.
Thank you for that. Committee members, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, 2 not voting. 1 is the chair, 1 is absent from this committee meeting. We're going to go ahead and table this report. Lorraine, if you can send an email to.
No. Yeah. I was that's
If you could send
Madam
an
Chair,
email.
I didn't hear you.
Okay, thank you. If you could send an email to Mr. Chi. Committee members, I highly encourage you to send an email to Lorraine so that she could gather all of the questions that this committee would like Mr. Chi to answer. And we're going to go ahead and invite him to the next Law and Order Committee where he can finish out his report. I do apologize, committee members. I do, as chair of the Law and Order Committee, we as a committee have been disrespected several times from employees within the Department of Public Safety. I will not stand for that any longer. It is my job, it is my duty, it is my responsibility to ensure that committee meetings run smoothly and with respect. So I do apologize that I did raise my voice a little bit in that report. I hope that you can forgive me during this time, but this report has been tabled. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move down to the next item on the agenda, which is new business. We have legislation number 0174-21 before us. Honorable Daniel So, are you on the line? Second call for Honorable Daniel So. Do we have a co-sponsor, Honorable Seth Damon, on the line? Okay, this legislation cannot proceed forward without a sponsor. We'll go ahead and move this legislation to the next Law and Order Committee meeting next week. So with that, we'll go ahead and proceed forward to item 7B on the agenda, legislation number 0158 wait. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to double check to make sure I was on the right agenda. Legislation number 0158-2. When do we have the sponsor on the line? Honorable Edmund Yazzie or Honorable Pernell Halona? Second call for either sponsors for legislation number 0158-21, Honorable Edmund Yazzie, Honorable Pernell Halona. Last and final call for legislation number 0158-21, Honorable Edmund Yazzie, Honorable Pernell Halona.
Madam Chair, this is Lorraine.
Lorraine?
I got an email from Honorable Edmund Yazzie. He indicated that this legislation is requesting for a work session and RDC. He said that after RDC has done their work session, it will go to LOC.
Okay, thank you for that information, Lorraine. So with that, committee members, we are now on item number 8, close of the meeting. Before I call for a motion to adjourn, are there any announcements that need to be made at this time? Committee members, I do have one announcement. I did send an email out, as you all are aware, to Mr. Jesse Delmar on the report or the status of cross-deputization across Navajo Nation. We have had many delegates, many chapter officials, even community members who have reached out to this community about the crimes that are happening and the response from officers. I know that there are some communities, an Eastern agency and also in Utah, that have asked if the cross-deputizing program is still in effect. The email does indicate some questions or some information that this committee needs to receive. I did schedule this for October 11th, 2021. Lorraine, can we go ahead and put this on the next agenda for Law and Order Committee so that we can have a discussion about this cross-deputizing? It's going to be a discussion on the day that we want this meeting. The actual report for the cross-deputizing will take place at a later time. So again, it's just to discuss a meeting to have with Law and Order Committee on the cross-deputizing program. And the reason we need to put this on the agenda for a discussion is we will be inviting all 110 chapters to join us on the line to ask questions regarding their communities. So it is going to be a huge endeavor. And it's going to be a committee meeting that will allow other elected officials to also ask questions. We'll be reaching out to the 24th Navajo Nation Council to share with their chapters to inform them about this meeting. I think if we put it out far enough in advance, there'll be enough participation during that discussion. So that is one announcement that I do want to make at this time. We also, committee members, I have had a few chapters who have invited us out to meet with their communities to talk about public safety concerns. We had Upper Fruitland in New Mexico, that's close to Farmington, New Mexico, that has requested for the Law and Order Committee to come out to the chapter and to hear the public safety concerns. Lorraine, if you could add that on the agenda as a discussion topic, and if it'll give you committee members some time to look at your calendars to see what date we can head to Upper Fruitland chapter to hear the concerns there as well regarding public safety. And more than likely, it will also cover the discussion on cross-deputizing, since Upper Fruitland is very close to Farmington. It's also very close to the Sheriff's Department there in Kirtland, New Mexico. So I do want to put that on your radar at this time. So those are the two announcements that I have at this time, committee members. I'd also like to remind committee members that we are currently moving forward with Department of Public Safety on the amendment to Title 17. We do have our meetings for the Title 17 meetings every other week. So the next scheduled meeting is this Wednesday at 8:30 in the morning at the Law and Order Committee building. Committee members, I'm going to request for the second time that if you could please send your LDA to this meeting. We need a lot of help with this title, particularly typing the title up with the sections that are currently not in the amendment. And so we do need some assistance on that. So if you can't, we're already using my LDA, and we got Office of Legislative Counsel that's taking on a bulk of the work. But I really want our counsel, Troy Cook, to focus on fixing the language to the amendment and not so much having to retype the entire Title 17. So again, if you can please send your LDA to this meeting so that we can divvy up the responsibilities in getting this Title 17 completed. We do have only 4 more meetings before fall session in order to get it introduced that fall session. So again, if you can assist us, that would be great. So those are my announcements at this time, committee members. Are there any other announcements that committee members would like to make? Not hearing.
Delegate Daniel is on the call.
I'm sorry, Delegate, our chair. So we did call upon you 3 times. There was no answer. We are now at adjournment. Unless you can get a committee member to suspend the floor rules to go back to the legislations. A motion has not been made. I did call for a motion. However, we were just making announcements. Committee members, we do have Chair Daniel So, our colleague, who is on the line. He is here ready to present his legislation. Is there any delegate who opposes having him introduce his legislation at this time? Going once? Going twice? All right, Delegate So, let me confirm that we do have a quorum. I see Delegate Otto So on the line. Delegate Eugene So is on the line. I am on the line, as well as Delegate Vince James. So we do have a quorum. There is no objection. So I'm going to go ahead and call upon legislation number 0174-21, sponsored by Honorable Daniel So, co-sponsored by Honorable Seth Damon. Do we have the sponsor, Honorable Daniel So, on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chair So. So with that, Lorraine, can you go ahead and read legislation number 0174-21 into the record?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Law and Order Committee. Tracking number 0174-21, an act relating to health, education, human services, law and order, budget and finance, and Navajo committees, and the nomination council, enacting the nomination Mr. A. Beina, Air is Life Act of 2021, This legislation will move forward to RDC, BNF, NAVI, and Navajo Nation Council. This has gone through the 5-day comment process. And at that time, the first report was submitted with 3 comments and 1 opposing comment. And then the second report came in with, there were 47 comments that were submitted to this legislation. Madam Chair, thank you.
So with that, committee members, at Law and Order Committee, as you know, we handle legislations 2 ways. One is if there are no questions without the presenter providing information on his legislation, we do proceed forward to a vote. Or 2, if we do have questions, we allow the presenter time to present his legislation. I would like to ask committee members at this time, do you anticipate or do you think you're going to have questions for legislation number 0174-21? Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times? Chair Daniel So, if you are good with this, we're going to go ahead and proceed forward to take a vote on your legislation.
Thank you, Giaga. I am good with it because the delegates will revisit at NABI, the NABI committee. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chair So. So with that, committee members, we are ready to take our vote. Mr. Mose, can you assist us with the roll call vote for legislation number 0174-21?
Madam Chair, I don't recall getting the motion second unless I missed it.
Oh, I do apologize. You are correct. Can I get a motion for legislation number 0174-21? And can I also get a second?
BC.
Motion made by Honorable Eugene So. Can I get a second? Second call. I need a second for legislation number 0174-21.
Delegate James seconds.
Delegate Vince James seconds the motion. So with that, committee members, again, we're going straight to vote on this legislation because there were no delegates who wish to ask any questions regarding this legislation. So with that, Mr. Mose, can you assist us with the roll call vote, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green. Thank you.
Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So.
Oh, thank you.
Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Otto So. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Chair, your vote of 2 in favor, 0 opposed.
With that, we have 2 in favor, 0 opposed, 3 who are not voting. 1 is the chair, 1 is absent, Honorable Edmund Yazzie. And I did get a text message from Honorable Otto So. He apologizes. He is actually in another meeting at this time, but he does
green. I vote green.
Oh, there he is. Honorable Otto So votes green, Mr. Mose.
All right, the vote will be 3 in favor, 0 opposed, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. So with that, legislation number 0174-21 does proceed forward to Budget and Finance. Thank you, Chair So, for being on the line and for introducing your legislation.
So
with that, committee members, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Chair So, go ahead.
and I appreciate the positive vote, and we'll go to Resource and Development Committee, and then Budget and Finance, and then to the Navikia kit, and then back to the council to Agent Patricia Nez Henderson was on the call. We appreciate her efforts to get this legislation drafted. Thank you.
Chair, so I don't know if on your legislation, it reads RDC, the one that's in front of me right now, only has health, education, human services, law and order, budget and finance, and Nabikiatske, and then Navajo Nation Council. It doesn't say RDC, so you may want to double check that legislation, or it might be an error from our legislative advisor on this one.
Thank you, Chieza Chair Charles Newton. If we turn the page, where my actual signature is as sponsor and Honorable Speaker Damon, it does show health, education, human services, law and order, resource and development, budget and finance, Nabikiatsi, and council.
I do apologize. It must have been an error on this, and I'm glad that we got that taken care of. So thank you for that, Chair. So good luck at RDC. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So with that, committee members, we are now at adjournment. Can I get a motion and a second to adjourn? Motion made by Honorable Eugene So to adjourn. Can I get a second?
Delegate James seconds.
Delegate Vince James seconds the motion. So with that, we're going to go ahead and proceed forward to the vote. Mr. Mose, can you assist us with the roll call vote to adjourn?
Yes, Madam Chair. Honorable Vince James. Honorable Vince James.
Delegate James votes green.
Honorable Vince James votes green. Honorable Eugene So. Honorable Eugene So votes green. Honorable Otto So.
I vote green.
Honorable Otto So votes green. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Honorable Edmund Yazzie. Chair, a vote of 3 in favor, 0 opposed, adjourned at 1:52 p.m.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mose, and thank you for your assistance with Law and Order Committee today. It is 1:52. The Law and Order Committee is hereby adjourned until our next meeting next week on Monday. Everybody be safe out there. Continue to mask up and use hand sanitizer. Up on that.
Okay, another.